Hi, welcome guys. This is Doc Lee, Yongpun Lee speaking. So today I return to make some English videos, and I guess from now on I will make more English videos than Chinese videos because I feel like my Chinese videos were kind of stacked for the YouTube algorithm, because many Chinese people, especially for those people who come from mainland China, we have a lot of CCP show. Many people were against my opinions because they were hired by the Chinese government, aka CCP. Of course, I know, Chinese government does not equal CCP itself, right? But actually, it's CCP controlling the whole country. So, so in order to avoid, wasting my time with them, I'm gonna do more English videos from now on, okay? So today, I want to do two English videos, right? Because today is it's on a weekend. I plan to do two English videos on a weekend and one English video per day for the weekdays, right? So basically, for this episode, my title is CCP wants to enslave the world like it has enslaved its own slaves in PRC China. Okay, why is that? Well, because I am a Chinese dissident, right? I'm a Chinese asylum seeker right now living in the USA, and I'm trying to get protection from American government because I'm trying to run away from communist China, and I'm openly against the communist China and CCP. But I'm not against the Chinese people itself. I'm not against the Chinese culture. I'm actually proud of my culture and my root, right? And my blood. So anyway, let's go back to the topic today. So I feel like the reason why I want to make this title, right, and share it with you guys is because I was grown up, I grew up in China, and I've been living there for about 38 years. Till I moved to Japan and then moved to America. I'm seeking asylum right now. So basically, many people, just looking at the facade of how powerful the CCP China is becoming, right? So now you guys see the real earth battle, right? China seemingly is winning that battle, right? Even Donald Trump has, no good method or no good measure against the CCP government. So CCP is controlling most of the rare earth material and rare earth industry in the world, including a lot of high advanced technology. So now we're talking about CCP not just for its cheap labor, the advantages of have lower human rights, lower human standards, this and that. I'm just saying that besides when you look at the facade, you think how powerful the CCP is right now, right? But actually, the CCP is still treating its citizens like slaves, because can you believe that, in the CCP China, in the PRC China, which means People's Republic of China, not Taiwan, right? Because Taiwan is called Republic of China. That represented the old China, right? But in the so-called new China, right? I cannot vote. I don't even understand why so many people support a certain mayor, because I never know the name of the mayor until the mayor got elected, right? So-called elected, because the mayor actually was elected within the CCP system. So we don't even know the existence of the mayor until, some people reveal his name. Okay, this is the elected mayor. Thank you for your support. But nobody had ever supported that mayor in the first place. So it's like we don't have freedom, we don't have the democracy there. It's just like, many people were against me to say, actually living in China, I've been living in China for 10 years, actually China is pretty much free. Well, no, yes and no. Yes, to a certain degree, because you might experience a limited scope of freedom, like you're able to purchase things on your own, you're able to drive cars, you're able to become a teacher like me, English teacher, or some sort of trainer. You're able to do the dance, like popping or this and that. You're able to do a lot of things, like you're able to do rap. However, you're not able to do anything related to the government if you're not part of it. And even if you are a part of it, you're not allowed to talk publicly about your political opinions, right? You're not allowed to voice out your support for Xi Jinping or your idea against Xi Jinping. No matter you're trying to support him or against him, you're not allowed to voice out in WeChat platform and also in Weibo, So in a lot of Chinese social media, channel. So if you're an article publisher, if you're a geopolitical expert, if you're a columnist, right, you're not allowed to have a lot of your free idea. You have to follow the CCP, and you have to really write an article in a way that a CCP wants you to write, which means you're not even allowed to actively praise CCP for, we have to say that CCP has done something good to China, but not all of them are good. Most of them are bad, right? But to a certain degree, actually boost the country's economy and boost its international reputation, a lot of times in a bad way. For example, the Xinjiang Uyghurs, right? And the Chinese against Muslims, this and that. Well, Muslim is another story, right? Because many people have a lot of controversy over Muslims. In the Western country, we also be witnessing the controversy between Christianity and Muslim, right? So that's another topic to talk about. But anyway, in China, you do not have the freedom of religion. You cannot create any religion. You have to follow Buddhism, you have to follow Christianity, you have to follow a certain existing religion under the government control. So even the Buddhists, right? Even the Buddhists or Christians, they are how can I say, like they're like a boss, like by the CCP. So we have the monks who are the CCP member. We have the the priests who are CCP member. So how terrifying is that, right? Because religion are not supposed to have any relation to the government or to the political power. I mean, for example, in America, some priests, maybe they're Republican, maybe they're Democrat, but that's their own choice to become a Republican or Democrat or somewhere in between, right? However, in China, you're forced to accept CCP if you are the head monk of the temple. For example, like Shi Yongxing, the head monk of the Shaolin temple. So many people, you guys know, the martial art, the Kung Fu, right? In the Shaolin temple. Like Jet Li or Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan, things like that. So anyway, China does not have freedom of religion. China does not have freedom of speech. China does not have the freedom or the rights of demonstration. China does not have a lot of things that other people normally have. No matter I'm talking about living in Tokyo, Japan, or New York, USA, right? We have the right to demonstrate. We have the right to follow a certain leader or disfollow a certain leader. We have the right to criticize a certain leader or a certain political phenomenon, but not in China. So basically, you guys think that China's getting a lot of power. The CCP is getting a lot of power, but actually, the slaves there, quote unquote slaves there, the common Chinese people, they are not free. Trust me, I believe in that country for 38 years till I went out of China. The first time, the first night when I landed in Japan, Narita Koko, right? The Narita, airport around Tokyo, right? Near Tokyo. And I feel like I was totally free because I was able to browse YouTube freely. Can you believe that? In China, of course, we had contact with the outside world. We actually know what's going on. But just like the Truman Show, right? Like a Truman World by Kim Carrey. You're living in a utopian society that is created by the CCP, and this utopian society is not that utopian. It's just like a hellish level of utopian society. It's just like a darkish level. You get bullied by the government cadres, right? You are bullied by a lot of gangsters hired by the government because you're not willing to move out of your own house. Because what? Because your house were to be bought by the government or by the corruptive officials to do some kind of entertainment center or something like that, or for a big project like skyscrapers. So they have the right to force you out. So that's why in America and in Japan, in a lot of free world, right? You have the right of your own house, despite how how like decadent or like how old that house is, right? You still have the right to own a house. If you do not want to sell to anybody else, you have the right to own it. But in China, they force you to move out of the house because they want to build a highway. Well, you think, collectively, right? Maybe that's good collectively for the country because we're building, like, Donald Trump said, China has a lot of new highways, like the CRS, Chinese railway, high-speed railway, this and that, from the surface, from the facade, you look like, wow, it's majestic, right? Wow, it's unified, majestic, massive, mega project. However, that is at the cost of civil rights. That massive construction campaign is at the cost of many people's basic human rights. Can you believe that? They were treated as slaves. They have no property rights. Maybe some people say, you get compensated by government. Yeah, for example, if you live in Shanghai, you have I'm not talking about feet, right? Because I'm still not very familiar about a feet or foot system, but I'm familiar with meters, the metric system, right? So we're talking about 100 square meters, right? You get 5 million RMB for the compensation. Many people say, see, Chinese government were treating well. But no, because you were forced. It's one thing that you get compensation for 5 million RMB dollars, right? RMB, right? Chinese renminbi, Chinese yuan, whatever you call it. So many people cannot distinguish between Chinese and Japanese. They will call Chinese yen, but we do not have Chinese yen. We have Japanese yen, but they all look the same. Look like the head of the sheep, right? Yeah, in Chinese we say yang, which means sheep. Look like the same. But anyway, so from the surface, right, you get 5 million RMB for the compensation. That was roughly equal to like $700,000 or something like that. Yeah, it's a lot of money. However, that is because you are forced by the government or by the gangsters hired by the government or the CCP. So it's against their free will. So they give you 5 million RMB in a humiliating way. Can you accept that? It's another thing that if you're facing a free market, right? For example, in Japan or in America, right? If the government want to build up something, they negotiate with you and you have the right to not to sell. Of course, you can sell, of course, like China, you can sell, but you have the right to say no, but not in China though. So the thing is that living in China, believe me, I'm not a the present, because I know like Vance has made a joke about Chinese people hurting Chinese people's feelings, so Chinese peasant, and I'm against that. That's a little of a racial discrimination thing. I'm against that. America is a lovely country, but it doesn't mean that everybody said everything in America is right? I have to think rationally. But the thing is that many of this real peasant, I'm talking about real peasant, not metaphorically peasant, right? The real peasant in China, their life is miserable. Let me tell you. I mean, me back in China, I was kind of good from the surface because I'm an English teacher. I was respected by many people, by my student, by the students' parents. I had a not bad income. I cannot say, I'm a millionaire, billionaire, but my income is not that bad, compared with many peasants or many farmers like that. However, I never test the freedom of speech. So my dissatisfaction toward the government upon seeing a lot of miserable poor people, how miserably they were treated by the government or by the CCP power or by the government officials or by the corruptive local officials and businessmen who had ties with each other, right? I feel like my heart hurt. I feel like, I was crying over their mistreatment by someone else. But when I'm trying to read some article, I was warned by the police. I was warned by my friend not to say anything against the government because you know what? Worst case scenario, you got captured. You got sent to prison. You serve your term. And the surface, Nobel Peace Prize winner Liu Xiaobo, right? Everybody know that. Maybe not everybody, but he's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. For against, outstandingly against Chinese government, against Chinese autocracy, things like that. Against Chinese authorities, right? So things like that. And the thing is that he got a Nobel Peace Prize and he sent I don't think this is like a lifetime imprisonment, right? I think it's like 10 years or something like that. But from the surface, your sentence was about just 10 years, but actually you might die. You have a high chance of dying in that prison because they will feed you something like contaminated food. They feed you the contaminated food and over time you will develop lung cancer or liver cancer, things like that, and they make you die. You never know, like some people, maybe they punish you to death, right? They physically abuse you to death and then they just claim to the newspaper to say that you hanged yourself by suicide. Maybe that's not the truth. So you never know. Even if you just get 10 years in jail, but you might die in jail. You can never just endure that 10 years. They have full control over the publication, the newspaper, this and that. They can make it disappear in a snap. That's it. They can make it disappear. So it's not that, well, but for many foreigners and for many Westerners, including Americans, right? Even the Japanese and Koreans, even they are Eastern Asians, but they're not living in a communist country like Chinese people do, right? So they would think, wow, China is powerful right now, right? But don't you forget, most Chinese people, I'm not talking about the super powerful, super rich, super connected to the CCP government people like that, right? I'm talking about a general public, like I can say like more than 95% or even like 98% of the people were treated like slaves. Believe me. They are the slaves with jacket. They're the slaves with suit. They're the slaves wearing Nikes and driving Lamborghinis. But believe me, if one CCP member, one CCP government official want you to die or want to confiscate what you have or want to be corruptive and kill your business or kill you, they can do that pretty easily. Maybe they will get punished by their political rival because within the CCP we have different, political gangs. We have political groups as well. We have different, political struggle between different kind of government officials. Think about Bo Xilai. The guy used to be the rival of Xi Jinping, but Xi Jinping actually make him lifetime imprisonment. And now his son become I cannot say dissident. I can say it's like a runaway. Deserted, some, things like that. He's living in Taiwan right now. So basically, I would feel like China is now, not the real China though. I love the real China. That is a China without a CCP element. That's a real China. It's Chinese culture thing, Chinese blood, like a Qing and Han, Chunqiu, different time period. But the China now, the CCP China, is trying to dominate the world, trying to enslave the world. You see that they are making themselves a king by saying that I have the control over rare earth material. I have the control over the whole industry chain. You see, and they are doing AI, they are doing the chips, microchips, and CPUs, right? They are doing a lot of things, and they are catching up. You think about the soft power, they're also catching up. What about a Black Myth Wukong, right? Now they released a new game called Black Myth Zhongkuai. That's another series. And what about that rap song 大展宏图, things like that? Many people dance like that without really understanding the Chinese meaning of the lyrics. So think about that. All these things from the surface, you think that's peaceful, oh, that's powerful, that's like a rise of the powerful nation, just like Qin Shi Huangdi, the first emperor of China, especially for many Westerners, you have a fascination over Chinese history. And you have, because that Chinese stuff is so different from the Western history, right? It's from the Western culture. I understand that. But please do not be brainwashed. Do not be brainwashed by the CCP. Believe it or not, I can see a lot of these comments are controlled by CCP shells or CCP trollers, right? I can see that a lot of commentary, a lot of these opinions, these comments on CNN, NBC, ABC, it sounds exactly like a Chinese government robot or some kind of, the Chinese prisoner. In a prison, they're able to get some time deduction, right? Or they're able to get some compensation by trying to comment to the so-called unfriendly content over the internet, especially in YouTube. So, and also they have a lot of Chinese sold out, right? Some Chinese shells, CCP shell, many foreigners, many Caucasians, all kinds of people, all races, all kinds of people. They are bought by the Chinese government to say, oh, China is so good, China is that good. Yeah, from the surface, everything is good, right? Sky is blue, like roses are red, violets are blue, sky is blue, trains is fast, people are peaceful. That's the surface. That look exactly like Truman Show by Kim Carey, right? And then if you dig deep, you really dig into the spiritual life of Chinese people, you feel like how poor their spiritual life is. Without a freedom of speech, Their whole life work like NPC. Have you watched the TV episode named The Westworld? I believe you have watched that, right? Most people were NPCs. They haven't really realized that they are the center of their own destiny. Many people, they are controlled, they are brainwashed by CCP from their childhood, right? It's pretty rare for them to get out of the fake world. Finally, just like Truman, right? Me work as a Truman, just like another Chinese version of Kim Carrey. Then I went, why the sky so blue? I went to the edge of the dome and I knock on that. I find, wow, that's all fake. There's a window outside. Then, coming out of that so-called fake dome, I finally realized that my previous life was totally a joke. Well, I was joking, because I had realized that by a very, very young age, probably when I was like 9 years old or 10 years old or something, because I watched a lot of foreign TV shows back then. I noticed the difference instantly. Maybe I had that gift. So from a very, very early year of my life, I understand that I'm living the fake world. Everything is controlled by the government. It's just like a Will Smith movie like I, Robot, or Out of the Clone Island by Michael Bay, if you're a sci-fi fan, right? So basically now living in the States, America is never a perfect country, but it's a lot better. It's a normal country. It's a great country. Now I'm able to express what I'm feeling in my brain. Maybe not PC correct, but I'm allowed to say whatever I want to say. Now I'm going to say that you guys be watchful, right? Be careful. Do not let CCP brainwash you. You look at how so-called chaotic the Western world is, right? But let me tell you, that's what the real world looks like. I'm not totally satisfied with what the West world looks like right now, right? I want to go back to the 90s, to the 80s, the golden age, right? Well, you're witnessing the rising of CCP power, the Chinese power. I'm not that proud of that. Although, that's my blood. That's the Chinese people. Ethnically speaking, that's Chinese people, but it's the CCP rising up. So guys, be careful. Do not really buy their spiritual product that easily. Do not play their games. Well, you can play the games, right? That's your choice. But never think, well, if their games are good, if their music is becoming better, their movies becoming cool, they're cool. They're not cool. Because, if you live a life as a real Chinese person, not as a foreigner, for 1 year, you're going to complain like me. Maybe you'll complain more about that than I do, than I'm doing right now. Okay? So be aware that China, the CCP China, the PRC China, the Communist China is trying to take advantage of this chaotic time and trying to, just get ahead in the world in a very unfair way. Well, I respect China's rising, but China's rising have to be a democratic rising, have to be good for the Chinese people, not in a way that you're not even allowed to type Xi Jinping in the world. You're not even allowed to type that word in China. How crazy is that? Guys, just be aware, right? I do not want to see America become China. I'm fleeing to America because I want to have freedom. I want to live like a normal person, right? I do not want to witness the fall of the Western democracy. I'm not talking about Western people in general, because Japanese democracy and Korean democracy also belong to the Western democracy system, right? So I'm talking about, guys, do not learn from Chinese CCP. I'm afraid of collective power. I'm not living in America. I do not want to live like a slave again. Ever, ever, never, never, ever. Because you just have one life. Listen to whatever you want to listen. Believe whatever you want to believe. As long as you're not hurting any people. As long as they're not breaking the law. Muslim, Christianity, whatever that is, right? Even if you believe some communism, because in America, some people are communists. But that's their freedom of speech. But if you're becoming corruptive and hurting other people and violating the law, that's another story. That I don't like. So anyway, just be aware. Western people, Western democracy, we have to think about a way to play with China in a very smart way that we can take advantage of what China has to offer to the world. But do not get affected, do not get influenced by the Chinese system, because the system, trust me, it is corruptive. Living in China, you do not have freedom of spiritual world. Believe me, because I was one of them before. Okay? So have a good day, and so I will see you guys at 8 p.m. today for another episode. Okay? Thank you. Bye-bye.